gonna have a little chat here because I've got tons of time on my hands and nothing to do but think. And this chat is going to be about shooting and about who to trust. And out of all of the shooters on the internet here, there are a solid handful, and I mean by a solid handful, I mean thousands of guys that are absolutely light years ahead of me. There are some who are light years ahead of me because they can afford more expensive equipment, and there are some who are light years ahead of me because they are so experienced that what I do with firearms is child's play to them. I would love to point out the Australian guy, Mark. I think his channel is Mark and Sam After Work. That guy and his wife are absolutely incredible shooters. And they've spent so many countless thousands of hours behind rifles that it's not even up for debate that he's probably among the most experienced ELR guys on earth. You know, a group of men that is literally in the thousands or in the hundreds out of everyone on earth, which is, I'd say that's pretty impressive. But as for someone like me, that we'll start off with what I call credentials. My credentials are next to nothing. I've had guns in my hand since I was 5 years old. I've been precision target oriented since I got my first .22 rifle, which I used to like to shoot a hole through a clay pigeon and then try to shoot an entire magazine through the same hole without shattering the clay pigeon. When I was 10, I got my first centerfire rifle. It was a .22-250, a Savage Model 10, and I've been very precision oriented ever since. So fast forward to adulthood, I spent many years not shooting very much at all. And I had a couple revivals in my love and interest in the sport, but really couldn't afford to participate as much as I would have liked. And now, at this point in my life, I can afford, with sacrifices in other areas of my life, I can afford to spend a little more time on shooting, which I think is a much more important skill in recent years than it has been in years past. And so in that time, I've gotten some instruction from some bench rest guys at hand loading and at shooting. And also some instruction from some F-class shooters at hand loading and at shooting. And also some instruction from some PRS shooters at hand loading and at shooting. Some instruction from former sniper trained individuals at shooting. And finally, instruction from some competition speed shooters that I don't consider to be particularly precision oriented folks, but that offered a ton of tactical advice. And I would say that that's invaluable advice as well. So as for what my aims are I aim to try to encourage people to try to shoot long range as long as they can reach, as far as they can reach, with the cheapest equipment possible. And that's with 223s that I've taken pretty near all of my ARs far past the ranges that people say they're effective at. And 700 yards is not even a stretch for these things. But we're told all the time that the maximum effective range is about 600. These things are much more potent than we give them credit for. And if you would like to argue that fact, you can ask anyone on earth who wants to get 50 yards away from a 22 long rifle and have someone shoot him through the chest. The answer is no one. Period. No one in a sane state of mind is going to volunteer to stand 50 yards away from you and get shot through the chest with a 22 long rifle. And that is less power than a 73 grain ELD match out of an 18-inch 223 is going at 700 yards. Less energy. So the effective range of these weapons is debatable, and it's more about the effective range of the shooter. And that is the exact reason why I encourage anyone who will listen to just take their rifle out and shoot it as far as they can reach. The 308 is my favorite cartridge that I have ever hand loaded for, and it is my favorite cartridge that I have ever shot consistently for precision orientation, other than, I mean, like, my friend has a 6mm PPC that is just absolutely a joy to take to 100 yards and shoot bug holes with, because that's what that rifle was built to do. He is a 100-yard bench rest competitor, and that's what that rifle does. But as far as a very cheap, very effective cartridge that is of absolute utility anywhere from 100 to 1,000 yards, the 308 really does it for me. And it just works well. And the reason why I encourage people to go 308 instead of 6.5mm Creedmoor or any of the Creedmoors is because the likelihood of your enemies in an emergency situation, or your allies in an emergency situation, having match 308 ammo that's going to shoot perfectly, or at least well enough, in your gun is near on 100%. Every NATO alliance country and then some shoot the 308 and have some version of a match 700 yard or 1,000 yard cartridge, like the M118. And so I also encourage people who have the option to get a chamber that matches the most commonly used match ammo that your allies or enemies will have. And for me, that is M118. The likelihood of either an ally or an enemy having an ammo that is either an M118 or an M118 clone is nigh on 100%. So that's what my selection was. I encourage people to get as long of a barrel as they can stand to carry within reason. I think 26 inches is about the maximum where you're still getting appreciable gains out of a 308 Winchester. And I selected 24 inches because all of the load data calculated for most of the load manuals that I read is in 24-inch barrels, and those are what I consider to be we'll say competent velocities for the bullets that I'm using. But the whole reason for having this talk, other than to encourage people to take their guns and shoot them as long as they can reach, is also to remind you to beware of what people tell you and what their reasons for arguing are. And I am only hoping that in the way that I make videos, whether it's timber falling, I'm very, very opinionated and very, very frustrated with a lot about that industry. But I would hope that the many, many, many videos where a viewer can see with their own eyes that I do this, I don't just talk about this or fantasize about it, is apparent enough that my advice at least can be considered credible enough to take with a grain of salt. And I always encourage people, go try it, because I'm not lying to you. Go try it, what I'm advising you to do. And it is no different with firearms. I would hope that people can see from the footage that I upload that what I'm saying and what I'm suggesting, it's not the gospel. And it might not even be the best way to do it. It's what the best way I've found for me to do it is. And the best way that I've found for me to do it is with the cheapest equipment possible. So that way I have more money left over to spend shooting countless thousands of dollars worth of ammunition for practice. And at this point, it is countless thousands of dollars that I have spent on ammunition for practicing with my weapons. And I know that can be difficult to afford. But if you are a person who buys a cup of coffee from a barista every morning, and you can sacrifice $6 that you would spend on your cup of coffee and not buy that cup of coffee, and spend that $6, put it into a coffee can and spend it on ammunition, you will in short order have hundreds of dollars per month extra to spend on ammunition. So you don't need to be rich to do this, you just need to be willing to make a couple of small sacrifices, which I was, and so I have. But the reason I say beware, and the reason why even the seemingly most experienced guys can appear to be frauds to me is because I have gotten myself the experience to see through baloney. Okay? Now, there's another kid, I think his YouTube handle is Mountains Mullets America. And that kid can shoot, son. And that kid can hand load very, very effectively. Very good shooter. Very good presenter, very good teacher. I very much admire this kid. And he has very good equipment, very expensive equipment. But I also have a warning to make about him. And it's not a warning about his character or about his knowledge. It's a warning about motivation. For me, my motivation is this is a monetized YouTube channel, and I want people to appreciate the information that I give, and therefore they'll watch the videos and I will make money. I'm here to make money. But I'm here to also encourage people to do something that I think is good for society, which is get out there and shoot your guns at long ranges. The young man at Mountains Mullets America is now sponsored by several companies, and so he is motivated by those companies to put out information that is sometimes questionable. And it doesn't mean that he lied. It means that the information needs to be taken with a grain of salt, that this young man has the absolute best and most capable equipment that money can currently buy. That doesn't take away from his skills, that takes away from what I think the average layperson can do with their general purpose rifle with X bullet in X load, etc. So taking people with a grain of salt, and the grain of salt being their motivation, is of the utmost importance. Do I still watch that kid? Absolutely. He's a joy to shoot. He has influenced the way that I make videos because I think he has an excellent business model and an excellent approach to making videos. I am nowhere near as good or as experienced or as competent as him. And so I admire him and I try to mimic him in a lot of ways because he's very, very, very experienced and admirable. But the grain of salt is that I do try to keep my motivations a little bit less at the forefront of how and why I make videos, and keep my content a little more honest towards the drive of helping than making money and entertaining. And I mean, there's flat out a reason why my channel is small and I don't have as wide of a reach, is because my content flat out isn't that entertaining comparatively, and I am not as experienced and I don't have as fancy of gear, and so I don't make videos that are as pleasing to watch, although I think they're often more useful. They have more utility as instruction regularly. Not every time, but often. I watched another video recently, can't remember what the channel handle was, and I don't particularly like to blast people who I don't have a particular beef with, that I don't like, where at least I would hope that what people grasp from me talking about, you know, Mark and Sam After Work and Mountains Mullets America, and there's a few other that I'll think of as I go, that I'm not trying to blast them. I admire them. They're incredibly good, and anyone who's curious about this, I highly recommend they watch those channels, because there's a lot to learn. But the channel I watched this morning was a guy who purported to be a Marine Corps sniper, and he was talking about the effective range of the 308 cartridge. And long-winded guy here, let me preface this by saying I watch more firearms related and cartridge specific and weapon specific content on YouTube than anyone I know. I am obsessive about learning more about ballistics and about the use of these weapons that I appreciate so much. So this purported Marine Corps sniper was talking about the effective range of the 308 and talking about bullet selection. And he said to not use boat tip hollow points for any defensive or hunting use. And I have such an aversion to listening to someone who is such an ignoramus that they don't even understand the components of the ammunition that they're shooting. And so that makes me arrogant guy when people say I should listen to, I should learn from, I should watch so-and-so, so-and-so, or so-and-so about anything, whether it's timber falling, shooting, or otherwise. When I find a person who cannot even understand the concepts at hand, I do not care to listen to them or to learn anything from them. And so the same can be said about me. I think about my analysis of the Sig Whiskey scope, that there are quite the handful of people who think that I do not understand the function of the parallax adjustment on that scope. And that's valid if your only experience with setting the diopter of a scope is from watching Rex reviews and him saying to focus on something out in the distance and make your reticle crisp and clear, where I was taught by an F-class shooter who does well at the state and regional level to set your diopter by putting your parallax at a known range, at a known specific range, and then setting the diopter to where both your target and your reticle are in perfect crisp relief. And the only time that won't work for you is if the parallax knob is not calibrated for the numbers that are actually written on it, in which case he says you should get rid of that scope and get one that the parallax knob works properly. And so that's what I have to say about the Sig Whiskey. That parallax knob, maybe it works, but it doesn't work properly. So, all of that being said, the list of people that I recommend you take with a huge grain of salt is vast. And a ton of it has to do with their motivations. And, you know, many of these guys are motivated by who sponsors them, who they sell equipment for, and they're, after years of dealing with weapons, they're still in over their head. I think about Mike over at Garand Thumb. Mike he's either intentionally saying stupid things to cause arguments in the comments to bump himself in the algorithm, which I think is disingenuous, and so I avoid him. Or else he's a fool who still, after all these years, does not understand the specific function or the applied ballistics of the weapons and the ammunition that he's using. He doesn't seem to understand how bullet drop works, and that is basic applied ballistics. Rex, over at Rex Reviews, I used to worship him when I had zero experience. And now, the more I move into this, and the more experienced I've gotten over the last couple of years, the less I respect what he has to say as the gospel. And now, granted, a guy who has the experience that he has, which is, an artilleryman for, I don't know if it was the Army or the Marine Corps, but I mean, that is applied ballistics at an engineering level to be able to fire artillery miles and hit targets. That makes King of 1 Mile with a sniper rifle look like child's play in a lot of ways, the math involved. But the motivation and the method of instruction has made me change my mind about him. So, just to be clear, my motivation, and if it ever wavers from that, please feel free to call me out. If my motivation ever appears to waver from encouraging people to get out there and shoot their guns, call me out, because that is my goal. Like, I'll tell you another person who I respect, not a long range guy. He can shoot long range, but he's not the long range guy. But it's old Hickok 45. That man, every time I've ever watched one of his videos, from when I was zero experience guy to where I'm at now, watching him shoot and handle a handgun or shoot and handle a rifle has done absolutely nothing but make me want to go out and bang steel, to go out and sling lead and burn powder. So I respect him so much, because I think at the end of the day, beyond making money, he's there to make money. But his first and foremost is to educate people and to make people want to get out and shoot guns. And I just respect that so darn much. Our world will have lost so much with his passing. Back to old Paul Harrell, there's another one. He made me want to get out and shoot guns and test these cartridges. Even when I thought there were failures or shortcomings in his testing methodology, it made me want to go out and test and shoot again. And I respect him. So, anyway, I've just been putting a lot of thought into this. Please take with a grain of salt who you guys listen to. Anybody who tells you you can't do it unless you have X, Y, or Z, they're trying to sell you something that you probably don't need to buy. Even down to, like, can't shoot 1,000 yards with outdated bullet styles or bullet weights. 168 grain Sierra Match Kings. I've shot 1,000 with those, with my Model 70 that costed me $900. And it was a $450 gun that I put a $450 scope and a $450 barrel on. So, and that gun shoots pretty reliably to 1,000 with 168 grain Sierra Match Kings. Does it shoot that range much more reliably with 190 grain Sierra Match Kings? Absolutely. The 190s are predictable. They shoot 7-inch groups at 1,000 on a windless day. The 168s, they shoot 2-foot groups at 1,000 on a windless day. A tiny puff of wind affects them so much because they're going transonic by that range. But it can be done. And a 2-foot group with a rifle that's as powerful as a .22 Magnum at that range is plenty deadly to get the job done in an emergency. So, anyway, just be careful. Anybody who tells you you can't do it without certain equipment, they might not be lying. They also might not be telling the entire truth. So, and generally, anyone who discourages people from trying instead of encouraging you to go out and verify these results. I encourage anybody to go out and verify the veracity of what I'm saying, because it's true. I've done it. So anyone who encourages you to the contrary, who discourages people from going out and trying something on their own to verify the veracity of their findings, that's not very scientific, and be careful about listening to them on any subject. So, I think that does it. If you guys have listened to me this long, I mean, it's quite the rant, but just keep her solid out there, guys. Go out and shoot your guns. Go out and shoot them a long ways and just see what they're capable of, because you will be impressed at how easy it is to do what these guys say can't be done. So, have a good one. We'll talk to you guys later.